Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, but I wanted more of this. So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. With me today is a journalist of 20 years who's recently published her debut novel, 7 Reasons to Murder Your Dinner Guests. It's Kerry Whittle. Hello.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Thanks so much for coming. As always, we start with the latest publication, your debut novel. Tell us a little bit about 7 Reasons to Murder Your Dinner Guests.
Right. So 7 strangers meet at a dinner party at an underground restaurant in London. They've got no idea who invited them there or why, but they sit down and enjoy this delicious dinner and wine and get to know each other a bit. At the end of the meal, they look around and realise there are black envelopes by each of their place settings. And one of the guests opens her envelope, and inside it says, "You will die, aged," and a number. Some of them are shocked and scared, and some of them just take it as a joke, a practical joke, sort of a stunt type thing. And but they all go back to their homes a bit disturbed by the evening. 2 weeks later, one of the guests dies in line with her number, and a month later, another guest dies as predicted. And so the remaining guests have to work out who their mysterious host is and if there's anything they can do to stop their numbers coming up.
Very cool. It's a really fun premise. I'm gonna guess that the inception of this whole thing was just the premise and then kind of exploring that.
Well, yes. I mean, the whole idea started, I had sort of the germ of the idea many years before I started writing it. I was at a wedding and I was there on my own, and I was on a table of singles. So it was about, I think, eight to 10 of us, on all like a mixture of friends and family of the bride and the groom. We all got chatting, and after the wedding breakfast, the waiters came around with these little white envelopes. And I watched the other guests start to open these envelopes. And I just had this thought about, what if there was something in those envelopes, a sort of piece of information that would change everyone's life and that everyone would react differently to, being such different people. And that, that thought stuck with me of what if what was in there was when they will all die. And in fact, at the wedding, it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. Obviously, it was a bit of a sinister wedding. It was they were wedding favours and they were lottery tickets.
Okay.
And so then it sparked a discussion about how you would spend your winnings, and it sticks in my mind that one chap said he wouldn't have cared either way, and because his wife had recently passed away, so all he would want was her back, which obviously is something that money couldn't bring. But that idea, that image of this table of very different people and these envelopes sort of stuck in the back of my mind for years, really, until I got to the point where I had a chance to sit down and have a go at writing my own book. And then I went back to that table, and the white envelopes became black envelopes, and they contained the ages of each character would be when they die.
Wow. Okay. So you obviously your career has been in journalism, but you've been around writing. You've done a lot of writing. Am I right in thinking then that this is the first sort of novel that you ever put your hand to?
Yes, absolutely. It's something I'd always wanted to do. I've always been a big reader since I was a child, and read The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark was the first book that I remember reading. And I studied English literature at university, and then went into journalism, working on women's weekly magazines in London for lots of years. And I loved hearing stories from various people over the years. My specialty was in real life journalism, so it was all about interviewing people with sometimes crazy, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes funny stories, and writing them up. Telling these individual stories. So, but it's
Okay.
always been in the back of my mind. I've always read, like I say, and it's always been in the back of my mind that the ultimate goal is to write my own novel. And so, after a number of years working in London, we moved up to Manchester and we had children here. And once they started nursery and school, then I had an opportunity to sit down and have a go at this, bite the bullet and have a go at writing this book that's always sort of been in the back of my mind. And so I did a Curtis Brown online novel writing course for 3 months. And as part of that, you had to submit an idea and 3,000 words of your story. And so that's when I went back to my table and created these different characters, and took it from there, really. So that was actually 2020. It was just before lockdown,
Yeah.
and that's where the story began. But in fact, I didn't really know where it was going to go. I didn't have an idea. Oh, I'm going to write a murder mystery or romance or whatever. I focused on creating these characters that I hoped would be believable and authentic and would behave and speak in an authentic way, and just really to follow their story, their individual stories, and just to see where it would take me. And what ended up happening during the course of writing, one character admitted to the other that they'd committed these murders, and so that's what told me, oh, I'm writing a murder mystery. And so that was the point where I was able to then work on the tropes that you would have in a murder mystery.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like you really tapped into your experience as a journalist, where you interviewed lots of interesting people, and then
Exactly.
the thing you focused on was having these very individual characters who sat around this table, each of them with their own stories and quirks and things like that. Okay, that's really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. I felt like over those years of interviewing lots of different people, I built up sort of a well of personalities, but also personalities as well as stories, to create these people who I tried to make believable. And also I really enjoyed moving from the points of view to the different characters, so to get some insight into what they were thinking and what they thought of the other characters, while they were also getting to know each other, mixing in like what they're putting across as well as what's going on inside.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And like you said, a great well of inspiration to draw upon. With the Curtis Brown course, is that the kind of course where you kind of have to come with you said you had to submit 3,000 words, I think it was. Do you have to have like a kind of fleshed out manuscript, or could it literally just be those 3,000 words for that kind of course?
I think there were certainly some people on the course who were further along the line and had nearly full manuscripts, but the minimum requirement basically was an idea, like a synopsis, and the first 3,000 words, and that's pretty much what I had going into it.
Okay, right. And then you said that you didn't really plan this out. You just kind of started writing and tried to see where it would go. Did that course, did the being on that course really help you shape the book to what it would end up being?
Yes, there was some work on obviously different elements of novel writing, such as characterization, and so we did exercises around getting to know your characters, what they would have in their pockets, all that kind of thing, and around dialogue as well. We did this one exercise which I really enjoyed, which was, it sounds a bit creepy when you talk about it, but you would like record a conversation that you would have with somebody. Like I did one with a mum outside the school gates. Not to be published online or anything like that, but it was. But you would take this conversation as sort of inspiration, and then you would sort of weave it into some kind of believable dialogue that you might have in a story. And it was so interesting because what I noticed was how we don't really talk in proper, full, sensible sentences. It was very much full starts and half sentences, and go off on tangents and things. But that was really interesting. So we did that, and then so there was various sort of modules on different elements of novel writing. But there was also probably the most helpful part of it was the feedback that you would get on your manuscript. So you would get some feedback from the tutor, but also feedback from other people on the course. and you were in turn providing feedback on their work, which felt so strange at first. I remember, when I very first started the course, and they advised you to do like a Word document, annotated Word document, and so to go through and just make like notes alongside the other people's work. And I remember messaging the tutor and saying, "Oh, can I just write a few sentences, in response to this work?" And they're like, "No, we think this is the best way to do it." But I got the hang of it really quickly, and it was so beneficial in my own writing when you sort of got to see what worked and what didn't work with other people. So that, along with getting the feedback from the tutor, who was an experienced writer, I think really definitely helped with my own writing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's incredible what you can suddenly notice in other people's work and then realize that is also in your own writing, but you couldn't ever have seen it in your own writing until you'd seen it in someone else's.
Yeah, definitely. It was really helpful.
And this is a 2-book deal with HarperCollins. So I'd imagine you're well underway with a follow-up novel, which I'm sure is being kept under wraps right now. But my question is, you kind of were writing this novel out as you went. It sounds like, obviously with some help and guidance from the Curtis Brown course. But when it came to the second novel, you have a lot more support around you. The process of conceptualizing and writing it, did that change a lot? Has it evolved a lot since writing 7 Reasons?
Definitely. It's definitely been a really different process to book number 1. So with the first book, as I say, I started it in 2020, and then you have the whole long drawn out process of finding an agent, and then I worked on it with her a bit, and then my editors. So I've got the 2-book deal with Harper North, the imprint of HarperCollins, but also with Source Books in the US, and the 2 publishers worked together with me on the edits in the earlier stages. So it was quite a long, the whole process here from doing that Curtis Brown course to the final edit was probably 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
The story evolved as I went along, because there was a point early on in the draft of 7 Reasons where there were only 5 characters. I got to the end, and I had this idea about 7 deadly sins, and so 2 more characters were added, and changes happened through the process of those years of working on it. And like I say, I hadn't intended to write a murder mystery. I didn't have one genre in mind really as I started. So with book 2, my publishers wanted another murder mystery, and they want to publish a year after 7 Reasons, so next year. So it's a very different process. I'm going into it thinking murder mystery, not just focusing on the characters as I did with 7 Reasons. And so there's definitely been more planning involved. But it's fantastic to get some more advice, because obviously before you have an agent or an editor, you're just sort of out there on your own, just trying to feel your way through with no experience. So it's been very different, but there are obviously more pressures associated with it because there are deadlines to meet, whereas that obviously wasn't the case with book number 1.
Yeah, but like you said, you have that kind of broader support system around you. You have your agent helping you, you have your editor helping you, as well as, I'm sure, other resources. And you probably have, I'd imagine you've stayed in touch with maybe some people from the Curtis Brown course, or like you have like a sort of community now that you maybe get feedback off.
Exactly, yes. So from my course, a group of us now have a group on Slack where we share work and give each other feedback and general encouragement and cheerleading and things, because it's it can be a long and bumpy road in publishing. So it's been brilliant to have that support, and with writers who are very talented and whose opinion I really value.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we head over to the cabin, I wanted to ask, obviously, lots of experience with journalism, which is a sort of different side of publishing. how much of that experience and how many of the kind of skills of journalism and that kind of writing are transferable to writing fiction, to writing novels?
There are a few. I mean, just the process, just the practice of writing every day. You know, as a journalist, I mean, you've got no, you know, that's your job, so you've got no choice. So you've got no choice. A job that you love doing, obviously. But you know, I'd go into an office and you would maybe have 2 or 3 interviews a day, and you'd be speaking to that person for an hour or so, and then you'd be writing it straight up in the same day. You know, it was a quick turnaround, and you're obviously working to quite tight deadlines. So you're sort of used to, I suppose, not having lots of time to stop and think, and just getting the words down on the page. And you know, I always used to think of it with the articles. You know, with writing a feature, it's very much just, you know, its own like mini story. You know, beginning, middle, and end. And I'd very much see it as like, you know, the first sort of draft is like a skeleton, you know, and each time you go over it, you're adding another layer to the story. You know, with filling in, you know, there will be dialogue in these features and details and that sort of thing. So the process is very similar, but obviously with journalism, you know, the longest article that I would have written was probably about 1,500 words. And so it was all about being as concise as you could be, getting as much detail and colour into a story as you could, but within that short space that you had. So I remember starting that Curtis Brown course and Googling how long is a novel, and it came back sort of 90,000 words or something. It's like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with all these words? How am I going to fill it? Because you're so used to cutting down. It's always been cutting down. But I mean, there's sort of an intimidation element of that, but there's also like a joy in that, because you've got space to explore, obviously the characters and the you know, the emotions, and to describe things in much more detail.
The freedom.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And one thing that I've really carried across with me is like detail, because in my type of journalism that I did, which is, you know, real life journalism on women's magazines, you know, it's often, there's a bit of a snobbery around that sometimes, you know, that, you know, it's sometimes those types of magazines can be called granny mags, but there's a real skill in it. And, you know, my editors that I worked for were always talking about detail. And, you know, if you mention somebody, you describe them, and you talk about like their posture and, you know, what they would wear. And, you know, if, I don't know, if a football top was mentioned, you know, it would be what team. And, you know, the small details really, really bring a story to life, obviously. And that's something that I really have focused on in my writing so far, is including that essential detail, which really adds to, you know, characterization and atmosphere and setting and things.
Yeah, absolutely. And if, you know, if in future novels you want to write about something that you maybe don't have too much experience in, you have the complete skill set to kind of reach out to people and interview them just as research for a certain character or a certain genre or the theme within a novel.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah. I can approach people, and I'm quite comfortable with asking them, you know, some, you know, slightly intrusive questions, I suppose. but yeah, you do develop, you know, with so many years of doing that job and speaking to all sorts of different people. You know, I think you do develop a bit of a you know, shortcut to you know, befriending them and gaining people's trust and getting them to open up a little bit, and getting those extra bits of information that really bring the story to life.
Yeah, absolutely. That brings us to the point in the episode where I ask you, Kerry, if you were snowed in at a cozy woodland cabin in the middle of nowhere, what book would you hope to have with you?
Oh wow, I've had a good think about this. Firstly, I can't think of anything better than being snowed in a lovely silent woodland cabin with nobody bothering me. That sounds amazing. And I've noticed that one of my favourite books, After You'd Gone by Maggie O'Farrell, has had a few mentions in this slot on your podcast before, and that is one of my favourites. But I won't say that. I had a thought as well. Should I go for a classic big tome, that would keep me busy however long I'm going to be in this cabin for? But then I worried that wouldn't be distracting enough. So I had gone through a few thought process. So then I wondered about an Agatha Christie novel, and I do love Agatha Christie, obviously, and I've read sort of her better known ones, so I could choose one I haven't read before. But then that might be a bit scary in this cabin on my own. So conclusion.
I'm so sorry, it's my dog.
Don't worry. In the end, I decided to go for something that would bring me comfort, and I've gone for Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. I love her novels around Maine, how she interweaves all her different characters. I love her characterization, and particularly her character Olive Kitteridge is just wonderful. She's like a retired school teacher who's can be quite abrasive, but she's also kind at her heart and self-aware. And in Olive Kitteridge, there's this scene where she's going through her old photo albums and sort of reflecting on her life and her bringing up her son and growing older with her husband. And it was just so moving. And I think about that scene quite a lot. So yes, Olive Kitteridge, Elizabeth Strout is my choice.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'm interested that you thought of Agatha Christie because, and I imagine this is maybe something like similar that if you're going to do, you're in murder mystery, you're obviously in a woodland cabin in the middle of nowhere. Isolating the characters is always such a big part of those kinds of murder mystery things. So I can see why you thought of that if you were trapped in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Perfect for some murders, and you have all the suspects caged in together.
Exactly, yeah, it's ideal setup. And I've read Ruth Ware did something around that, didn't she? Is it One by One or something like that? It's very good. I'd recommend. Very creepy. Trapped in the snow with your killer.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. There's plenty of horror stories set in that kind of thing. So next up, we're going to get a bit more into some of the industry side of things, like querying, landing an agent, and going on sub with the agent. All that will be available at patreon.com/right and wrong. Because like you said, it's all you, it's all from you. So it seems strange and alien for them to be interested in something that's like just you.
Yeah, exactly. It does, but no, I'm getting the hang of it, and I am feeling the fear in doing it anyway.
Yes, well, that's great, and great advice to live by. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Kerry, for coming on and chatting with me and telling us all about your new book, your debut, 7 Reasons to Murder Your Dinner Guest. It's out right now in all the usual places. It's been so fun chatting with you.
Thanks so much, James. Thanks for having me.
And for everyone listening, if you want to keep up with what Kerry is doing, you can follow her on Instagram at Kerry Journo. To support this podcast, like, follow, and subscribe. Join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Kerry, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode. Shout out time. One of my amazing patrons, Lee Foxton, is querying their debut novel. It's a family drama, commercial fiction along the lines of Jojo Moyes and David Nichols. Fingers crossed, I am rooting for you. Good luck.